Okay.
Oh no, the tripod's up here.
That's a permanent fixture now. Are we on? Oh, great. Welcome and good evening. This is the Sherborn Board of Selectmen meeting of February 24th, 2014. As we always do, we'll have David Williams read us the proposed agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item we'll have is to add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair with 48 hours in advance of the meeting, and I don't think we have any of those items tonight. And then a public comment period, and then after that, scheduled at 6:15, is going back to review of the warrant articles for the town meeting, and the ones tonight you'll be looking at are the Sherborn Governance Task Force. There are three articles that they're bringing forward. Then at estimated time of 7 o'clock, look at the town administrator's report, and I'll give you an update on the February 12th meeting that we had with the advisory committee, and look at budget and warrant updates and planning discussion on where we want to go from here. And then selectmen reports, if there are any, then approval of warrant and upcoming meeting topics, and then set the date of the next meeting. Right now is scheduled for Friday, February 28th, this Friday morning at 10 a.m. And then we'll break into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to pending litigation, Cannon et al. V. Town of Sherborn Zoning Board of Appeals et al. And Cannon et al. V. Town of Sherborn Planning Board et al.
Great. Anybody have any amendments to the agenda?
Only if we have the minutes. I noticed we did get some minutes by email this week. It would be good if we could approve minutes as soon as possible so we can get them out to the public. And I don't know if that's possible at this point.
Nothing for tonight.
Maybe for Friday.
Well, let's shoot for Friday.
morning. Let's
Yeah.
get all those for Friday
See
morning.
what we can do for Friday. Any other suggestions? No? So I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as
Motion
written.
approved.
Second.
All in favor? Great. That puts us into public comment section of the agenda? Yes, indeed. Want to grab the mic while you're at it?
All right.
Karen Jewell.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Council on Aging Board, I would like to invite any interested parties. Tomorrow, we are going on a field trip to look at the Pulte projects. We are leaving promptly at 10 a.m. We're going first to Bedford, where we're going to be doing a drive-by of the Hartwell Farms property, which is supposed to be the property which will be most like Sherborn in terms of how the layout is going to be. That is a 75-unit project on 25 acres. From then, we are then going to go to Acton to the Quail Ridge project, which is a lot larger. It's 152 units on, I'm not sure of the number of acreage, but they have 3 model homes. So we will be reviewing the model homes, and then we will be coming back to Sherborn. The bus will leave promptly at 10. If you are interested, call the COA office at 508-651-7858. That's 508-651-7858. And leave me your name and telephone number. And we have approximately 10 additional seats on the bus, so it will be first come, first served. That is for tomorrow, Tuesday, February 25th. Thank you very
Great.
much.
Thanks, Karen. Little road trip. Any other public comment? Yes, indeed. Sue Tyler.
Susan Tyler, Western Avenue. Does the town of Sherborn have some kind of a policy regarding potholes? And when somebody reports it, how long they have to take to repair it?
Normally,
Surrounding towns do. 24, 48 hours seems to be the norm. The 48 seems to be the norm.
I'm pretty sure that there's something within state law, once you receive a notification of a public safety item, is supposed to be addressed within 24 hours.
And who is it best to report? To the selectman's office, the highway department? Who is it best?
I would report it to the selectman's office, so it gets logged in, and then we would send it over to CMND.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware of no policy, so I think that makes good sense. I figured we'd probably touch base briefly when we get to TA report about potholes, because there are obviously a bunch of them out there these days.
Yeah, I've seen the reference. Basically, the insurance carrier, if you've, the insurance company will back you on any claim that comes against the town within that 24 hours, if the town can prove that it hadn't been reported to them.
see.
Yeah. But once you go beyond that 24 hours, then your liability is increasing.
Gotcha. Great. Any other public comment? Yes, sir, Elliot.
While you're talking about potholes, is there anything the town of Sherborn could plead with the town of Natick to pave South Street in Natick? So we paved half part of it last year, but this thing in the Natick section is
The washboard
just
ride?
outrageous.
Yep, I hear
If you
you.
don't believe me, drive over it a couple of times.
Okay, we'll take that under advisement, I think. In fact, I think, David, you're meeting with the TA over there, town manager or whatever at some point.
Thursday afternoon, so I'll...
If you
say
remember
something.
that, great. Say it was a rough ride over.
That's one of our main roads out of
Yeah,
town, Natick could care less. But,
Understood.
I
Okay, any
think- I
other?
think they're getting Chapter 90 funds for it, so I think we should just say that, have you got any ideas when? It's been years.
All right. Great. Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, Kitty, you want a few more minutes? You're not on for another 7 minutes, so we'll move something up.
Hope I haven't stood up.
I think you got some people out in the hall now.
Yeah, so they're going to come in.
They're waiting out there.
So we have a warrant, and you have the cover sheet, David, for warrant 32. I had sent an email of questions, none of which are going to cause any issues with this, just broader questions to
Thanks,
address.
yeah, I read those.
So appreciate those. Thank you.
Hopefully
It's
the
just-
answers, we get copied on the answers.
Yeah, good. All right, so this is warrant 32, and it's vendor payments and payroll in the amount of $643,800.47. I'll take a motion for approval.
I have a question,
Okay, go for it.
Chairman. You had circulated to the town administrator some questions about this warrant. Were those answered?
That's what I just talked about. None of those were, no, I had no response to those from David and Ruth.
And are these, for example, are we being asked today to approve any payment for unauthorized snow day absences and things like that?
I'm not aware of that.
No.
Okay. I know that was one of your questions.
My question was really clarifying that we had corrected from the last warrant, which was contingent upon doing that.
Right,
And
okay.
I don't have an answer to that,
But
but
it's
I'm not
in
going to hold
it's not
this
in this
warrant
warrant.
up.
Okay.
But to the extent we didn't correct those types of things, we need to not lose sight of that. So I hope to get explanations for these various questions. But again, none of these, yes, none of these require, it would suggest from my perspective that we don't authorize this
All
warrant.
right, so if you've reviewed and you're okay with it,
Yes.
I'll move to approve.
Okay, I'll take a
Second.
second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Great, thank you.
But Mike, he did say that when the reply comes, he'll circulate it
That's
to
good.
the,
That's right.
to the whole board.
Yep. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Mike. All right. How about some next meeting topics while we're on the topic? We'll cover that ground since we've got 5 minutes. And so here's what, I don't know what you've got on there, but here's what I'm going to suggest. Because what you have on there is going to be a surprise to me, and I love surprises. But further to, I know we talked, I don't know, 2 meetings ago, that I wanted to get just a brief session with David, former finance director, giving us the financial draft, the GASB 45. Not an expert, we would then have the auditors and all that. But I think we want to sign off on the financial statement draft. And so to the extent, David, you can help us make smart of that, that would be useful. So I'd like to do that Friday if we can. If that's too soon.
This Friday?
Yeah, if we can't, let's put that off, because I had that GASB 45, and I'm still waiting on I know we're still waiting on the 6-month, 12/31 financial results report from Ruth.
Right.
And so, I talked about that back on February 6th, so I'm just bringing that forward again. If we can't do it on the 28th, because you've got other stuff on a full agenda, and we've got a brief period of time with folks available, Then let's set a date when we can deal with
I'm
that.
pretty sure that last time you mentioned it, you said to down the road when we could schedule it as convenient time, which is what we did, and I think the date we had.
So you have it scheduled?
March 13th, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
all right.
scheduled it
So as
then.
long as the auditors aren't chomping at the bit to get us to say release, because
Right,
it's really
right.
our financials,
Right.
I prefer that we all said we like what's there, we're
Right.
happy, and they can then go to press, okay?
So last year, the auditor came in at some point.
That's right. And so then
That
we'd have the
after?
auditor come in. So I don't want the exhaustive understanding, but I'm just asking you to take a look at it from your perspective
Right.
versus us neophytes here, and help us understand what's there, and also so we're comfortable.
You're a
saying it's
CPA,
good.
I'm not, so
I'm a
don't
former
say it.
CPA, but this is fund accounting craziness, municipal accounting. So I find it quite obtuse. All right, so we have that scheduled. So what do you have scheduled for Friday then, Diane, as you look at me?
John Higley's coming in. with,
Okay.
you know, to talk about the floodplain map, an update,
Okay,
an update on the medical marijuana.
on the warrant articles, yeah.
Yep, Carol Rubenstein is coming in for the 2014 reciprocal agreement for the Hazardous Waste Consortium. She does that every year.
Okay,
And we have 247 Washington Street back on the agenda for the notice of intent to sell. It had been distributed to all the boards and
All right.
committees. Two
We-
people did respond.
okay, so we also had another property that came
11
up.
Mason Hill is on the agenda for Friday, too.
Okay, so you got both of those.
So that's for Friday.
Yeah, all right. And are we done with Carol, or it's not really Carol's, but it's our warrant article for the work over there? So we're all set with that, yes? We don't need to have any more discussion on that
Don't, it's
particular
been
one
through
while
capital.
she's here.
For the overlay and
Yeah.
the transfer station?
Yeah, yeah.
No, that's, I mean, we can, but.
No,
it
at some
was
point, we're
already
going to
vetted
vote,
out.
we're going to take a position on various things, including that.
On the whole
But I
warrant,
think
right.
we don't, while she's here, we have no need for her to revisit that. Okay, that's all it is.
And we'll see that in enough time ahead of Friday to make sense of it?
Reciprocal grant?
Yeah,
I have copies of it right now.
excellent.
And John Higley's stuff.
John Higley, whatever John Higley has sent me, I can give you to,
Okay, so you'll have a draft agenda tomorrow morning then, too, because you,
give you the
got to get that in.
draft online.
Okay. All right, and we have the other thing scheduled for March 13th, you said, right? Did I hear that? This, David helps us be smart about all the stuff, including Ruth getting this 1231 report. All right, good. Great, all right, well, that brings us to 6:15 and Kitty's committee.
You want us to go to the table?
Yes, please. Some of you get the comfy seats, some of you won't.
I was gonna-
Can you pass that?
Are you going to have all your committee up there, Kitty?
There are four of us here already.
Okay. Oh,
Come on, you
good.
shy boys.
Yeah, don't be shy, don't be bashful. So Kitty, here's how I'd like to play this, or do this, if I could. I just got, hang on, this is an extra, okay. As far as a process, all right, is if you could just go over who you guys are, what you were charged to do, why you're here, and then explain what it is we're looking at. Maybe we take them one at a time, so that we could have an opportunity to comment and question, and then I would put it out to the public for an opportunity to comment or question, and we'll deal with that, and then maybe come back here, and then we'll move on to the next one. Does that sound like a
That's-
reasonable plan?
But may I have an opening statement first?
Absolutely. So I'm putting it to you. I just want to say that's
No,
all,
I-
if we could do it that
That
way.
makes a great deal of sense, and we want to make this process as simple as possible for the voters to understand.
Right.
Good evening. I'm Kitty Sturgis, Chair of the Sherborn Governance Task Force, and our committee is now complete. To my right is Chuck Young, who is he's also the clerk, and we're grateful for his minutes. Rob Tierney on my left, George Shea, and Ron Origo. People may not remember, but a motion that was made at the 2013 annual town meeting created the governance task force during the deliberations of Article 23 of the town meeting warrant. The motion was made by James Campbell and duly seconded by George Shea, stating in effect, and I'm reading from the minutes of the town meeting, the town moderator, after consultation with the Sherborn Board of Selectmen, shall appoint a task force of 5 registered voters to recommend changes to the town bylaws dealing with governance after considering the recommendations in the Massachusetts Department of Revenue and the Collins Institute reports. Preferably, each of the task force members will have competency and experience in one or more of the following areas: organizational structure, finance, human resources. Further, the task force will report back to the town within 9 months, such report to include a draft warrant articles for the town to consider at the subsequent town meeting. The vote to refer to the study committee was carried. Corey Lincoln appointed the 5 of us to this committee after consulting with the Board of Selectmen. And we started our work on July 24th, 2013. Since that time, the task force members have interviewed numerous town administrators, town managers, former town administrators, town officials, and authors of the Collins and Department of Revenue reports. Interested citizens attended nearly all of our meetings and shared their comments, observations, concerns, and suggestions. The task force determined the major and immediate issues as: should the town administrator's job description be codified as a town bylaw or special legislation? Should the Board of Selectmen be authorized by special legislation passed by the Mass General Court to delegate its obligations regarding the signing of warrants for payment of town funds to the town administrator? Should the town firmly request the Massachusetts General Court to enact special legislation to authorize the town to implement the Collins Institute recommendation that the Board of Selectmen's membership be expanded from 3 to 5 members? The task force investigated questions raised by Section 2 of Article 23 and found the issues raised in that section, the conversion of the town treasurer and town tax collector's position from elected position to appointed positions, have been addressed in several alternative ways by towns of the Commonwealth. Given the complexity, advantages, and disadvantages of these alternatives, the task force encourages further study on this issue in the coming year with related report to the 2015 annual town meeting. We filed a notice of intent for 2 articles with you early in December, but after our discussions with our town council, Barbara St. Andre, we feel that we will be recommending 3 articles for this coming town meeting. I'm trying to shorten this for you. Okay, which article would you like to start with first?
Why don't you start with, because I'm going on what was in my pile, we'll
Okay.
start with the bylaw change for town administrator's job description.
Okay.
Would that be a good one to start with?
That would be an
Saving
excellent.
it best for last,
Okay.
depending on how you view it.
I'm just checking my notes here. Do you want us to go section by section with our recommendations, or just sort of try to
However here's an opportunity to educate the voters. That was one of the challenges that, having spent a lot of time on that Article 23 last year, was just it seemed there was not enough opportunity for people to get smart about what was trying to be done, including, in the public and so forth. So here's an opportunity for you to do that. I know I've certainly looked at it. I'm sure my colleagues here have looked at it in great detail. I have a few questions, but, that gets into some of the weeds here, and so however you want to do it, Kitty.
Well, I think one of the major recommendations we're making is a timeline for the appointment of a interim town administrator, and the process to start looking for a new town
Right,
administrator.
Right.
And then we went into the powers and the duties of the selectman.
Of the town administrator,
Town
yep.
administrator, and he's the chief administrative officer of the town, and it explains where has responsibilities and where he's not
Right.
responsible. He's responsible for the of the office of the Board of Selectmen and agencies under the control of the Board of Selectmen, and establish working relationships with all other town boards, departments, and commissions and committees. And he has direct supervision of employees of the Selectmen's office and general supervision of department heads under the control of the Board of Selectmen. And department heads and other employees shall report to the Board of Selectmen through the town administrator. And let's see, and it goes in general and appointing authorities of the town employees. And I think a lot of this was the same verbiage that you used in 23 last year. I think that goes on for a long period of time. And then under general and appointing authorities of appointed boards, the town administrator will forward to the Board of Selectmen all applicants for the appointment to the town committees, boards, councils, and commissions, including recommendations of the respective boards, committees, council, and commissions under the Board of Selectmen. And we are also recommending that he would be designated the town's human resource director. We realize that we are looking forward to meeting with the Personnel Committee to develop the correct language that would go into the personnel report or personnel administration plan that would authorize this. But, let's see, am I shortcutting this too much for you?
No, so how about, no, you're fine, because then I certainly have questions that I could ask in section by section. How about-
And then he or she would be responsible for the maintenance and repair of all town buildings, except for those that are under certain committees, and that's clearly stated here.
Yep.
And he or she would then become the chief procurement officer, which
He already is.
he already is, but
Yep.
it's to have that there.
Yep.
And then one section that was added after our first submission of this article that Barbara
The
realized she
catch-all.
left it's the catch-all
Yep.
committee, which I appreciate. She picked up on that. And then we have a section under removal and suspension of the town administrator. And that's, I believe that the language for that is really in your contract with the town.
Right, because I remember we had, so I'll go, can I go through it then? How about that, unless you want more to say on that one, rather than jump to the next one, okay?
Okay, go ahead.
Or-
I would
go
just
ahead.
add that a lot of these are things that came out of the Collins Institute report and the recommendation. The goal was to define the responsibilities and a detailed job description for the town administrator. The goal is to be able to attract and retain strong town administrators. And a lot of what we had proposed is the same language as what was proposed in the last town meeting, cleaning up what we viewed as several problems in it. And I suspect that having considered at the last town meeting, that it will be a much more detailed discussion at this town meeting. But the goal is to be able to attract and retain a strong town administrator to free up the Board of Selectmen to make policy decisions.
Yep,
Hey, Peter, I had sort of an overriding question before we get into the weeds of individual
absolutely,
sections.
yep.
Can one of you explain, I assume in looking at this and the Collins report and last year's article, you also thought about what David currently does. And can one of you just explain what in here is intended to be a change to what the town administrator currently does as a matter of practice, if not law, and what is just codifying what you understand the current duties to be?
I'll have to email.
Well, I can
I'll take one piece of that. And I spent some time on the human, can you hear me okay? On the human resource aspects. So to the best of my understanding in the body of our work, one change is in the area of human resources, and that would be having more of a consistent process in managing the practices of assessing employee performance under the guidance, or I should say the accountability of the Board of Selectmen. So, in the case today, David would be responsible for ensuring that people are fairly assessed in their performance, that if there are any concerns about any allegations of code of conduct, including discrimination, anything in that manner, that a person would clearly have a place to go to seek counsel. So that is in its state in this revised town administrator job description, much different than we understand the position today.
That's Clause E on this?
That is,
Yes.
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 It's part E.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear, Rob and I spoke to a number of town administrators in other towns, and it's clear that some towns with very strong town administrators, the bylaws are not non-existent, but they're very general, they're not detailed. The reality is, you only get as good a town administrator as you hire and retain and keep. We were trying to set up a structure and a description to codify it, if you will. But, the de facto situation is far more important. This doesn't guarantee that we'll be able to hire and retain strong town administrators. It just tries to make it clear what his or her responsibilities are going to be.
Yeah, and I just was curious what's descriptive
Yeah.
and what is proscriptive, and it sounds like you've...
yeah, and I think, just
least
further
address-
on the human resource aspect, I mean, today, the Personnel Board is highly consultative, and, with the change in wording here, would allow the town administrator to be more decisional in matters regarding human resources, so that would, to the earlier point that Kitty and Chuck have made, that would free you all up from a capacity standpoint, allowing David to make more decisions, with town council being a resource whenever necessary.
Can I ask a follow-up question on this?
Sure, absolutely.
As I read paragraph E, I think it's great to have a human relations director, and we all had spoken about that when the Board of Selectmen had met with the governance committee. We thought that was a nice thing for a town administrator to do. But my question is, at the beginning, you say the town administrator's jurisdiction is limited to not those within the jurisdiction of other elected officials, committees, boards, councils, or commissions, or those under the chief of police or the fire chief. But here, I think you're saying that notwithstanding that language, he would be the human relations person for everyone except for the schools and the library. So am I reading that correctly, or is it the intent?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's correct.
Decisional versus advisory.
Yeah.
I think the concern was that sometimes the elected officials need professional guidance when they, number one, go to hire someone, or if they're terminating someone. And so there has to be a central place that they can go to. Presently, we don't have that, as I understand it. So that's what we were trying to capture in this section E.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was a contradiction between earlier saying he won't get involved with all of these people who could benefit from the assistance. But then we say over here something different, so
Then maybe this is
So would you
something-
say this section is applicable to anybody subject to the personnel administration plan? Because that was one of the points that we tried to keep making last year.
Section 6.2E?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, the answer would be yes.
Yeah, okay. And that's good to hear
Yeah.
from my perspective.
And
I
we,
like that
as a body, we thought that was a good suggestion, so we went with it. And when we met with Barbara St. Andre last week, or 2 weeks ago, she also thought that was
So
a
would
best
you,
practice.
would it be wise to even add some language to that effect to clarify this confusion that Paul and others
Yeah.
will likely have, by saying, i.e., I don't know how you word it, but basically you're getting in there, individual subject to the personnel administration plan.
Because the way it's set up now, you have this general section 6.2, the general statement that says no jurisdiction at all
Yep.
over these categories, but then under a subsection, you have A, B, C, D, E, which fit under that topic sentence, but
Yeah.
under the E, it looks like what you said is what we want.
Right.
But that may be a little different from what
It's
it says.
I think we just, okay, I think we did discuss that as a committee, so, but I'm not remembering why we chose to word it that way.
Just a little background from our Article 23, we were changing the language between the first day of advisory's public hearing and the second day of advisory's public hearing. And what was printed was not what we basically said was our final version. So I'm sure you'll have some edits
Yep.
as a result of this, as well as other input you may get from other folks. I'm sorry, Grace.
And that's what we were trying to achieve, trying to get the best document we could to you the first time.
No, I understand. So how about I go through some of my weedy stuff, all right?
Go for it.
We can do this a section at a time, or are we going to each go, or how do you want to do this?
A little free-flowing, but if you have something to add, for instance, I'm going to say that I find that this, the time period, the time frames that you've put in here, which you said you put in time frames to get an interim town administrator in, I find those time frames restrictive. However, I don't know what to suggest. It just seems a lot of those dates or time periods may be impractical, having seen the process of what this town goes through in the past, whether it's because you've got to schedule meetings, whether you can find the right candidate and so forth. So having 60 days to get an interim town administrator in for a term not to exceed 90 days. Those are very narrow windows. And then to the extent you find that you need him or her longer than 90 days, you get only another 60 days. I just find that very restrictive.
Okay.
That's my input. But again, I don't have any suggestions. And if-
I was sort of thinking the same thing. I think it's good to put some pressure on so we don't have a long period of time without a town administrator. We need to have a town administrator, but it may be hard to find somebody who's willing to take a 90-day position who's actually qualified to do the work. I don't know if that's the case. And I also wondered, you said appoint a qualified administrative person, and I don't know what an administrative person is. Can we just say a qualified person? The word administrative to me doesn't really mean anything clear.
I would say one of the concerns we had, now that we're defining this as a strong TA, if that person resigns, and then these dates aren't from the actual notice period, but the actual date of, final day of resignation, having more duties, we wanted to make sure that that didn't go on for an extended period of time.
That's a really good idea, as long as it works practically.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And we chatted about our experience hiring people, how long does it take? In the interim, what I found from those TAs that may be retired, they can come in and work for a short period of times, their hours are limited for the year, so those people are more readily available as opposed to a full-time position, which obviously would take longer.
Okay.
And that's really what went into our discussions there.
Yeah, but you're putting something into a bylaw, and so it becomes the rule. So let's think a little longer about and harder about the time periods here. It would be my recommendation.
Peter, would you suggest a longer, the concern we had is how long do you go without at least an interim TA? Would you suggest 90 days as opposed to 60 days?
Again, I have no suggestion. We went 8, 9 months without anybody. We did quite fine, but but nonetheless, we've managed to find somebody.
Yeah,
No, I'm just saying, I don't have a time period. It just seems impractical to me, okay? Sitting up here. Of time period?
To say that we should try to do it within 60 days, I think is a good thing. I mean, maybe you put some language in there that makes it aspirational or encourages it or strongly encourages it. Because I don't know what the remedy is if after 60 days there's no town administrator. What's the result? What happens? So maybe it's more practical to give some direction without saying it quite that way, but to me, that doesn't bother me. What's harder for me is to think that the interim administrator is a term not to exceed 90 days and then not to exceed another 60 days. You may find somebody who can stay on for longer than that, who's doing a perfectly fine job, but you don't want to hire them necessarily as the full-time administrator until they've gone through some kind of probation period or something. I don't know if 90 days is really enough time to figure out if somebody can do the job or not. I don't know.
I mean, the process of hiring David, and he's right there, the process of hiring him was quite lengthy. And then you have to negotiate a contract, and that's lengthy, and, the individual has to give notice, all that, and not knowing what the market is for interim town administrators as well as permanent town administrators. That can vary, and we found, we had 5 candidates that finally were brought forward to us, and within a week, 2 had taken other jobs, so...
Well, that's a reason to work quickly.
That could be, but nonetheless. All right. 6.2, just a little more broader perspective. Part of the effort here that you've done, which is great to see that you've lifted a lot of the language from last year's efforts in Article 23. It's all about trying to help define responsibility versus authority versus accountability. Those are just sort of the theoretical stuff. One of the words last year, that was in there that I originally objected to, was under the policy direction, the word policy, because it was, I had suggested striking it, then we put it back in, and the reason we put it back in, because it's already determined here in this baby that we're here for policy. However, some would argue, and I read some minutes of recent SOS, that there's micromanagement by folks on this board, let's say. It's hard to, the town does have I guess I would call it, there's an environment here, an embedded process of micromanagement, that people are demanding micromanagement of us, or that things don't get done. So it's not that we want to be micromanagers, but stuff still has to get done, and the buck stops up here. So I just wanted to throw that out there as part of the discussion, not to suggest changing the word, but it's further to the conversation. However, in this section, you exclude, but not those within the jurisdiction of other elected officials, committees, boards, councils, or commissions, or those under the chief of police and fire chief. So is elected the qualifier for all of those that follow? Because last year in the draft, we had specified who was under the TA and who wasn't under the TA. And this is a little bit ambiguous unless we all agree that the word elected is the qualifier to officials, committees, boards, councils, and commissions.
Except for, obviously,
And I think that's what your
police and
intent
chief.
Yeah.
is.
Except for the chief of police and the fire.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
But everybody else there, you're really dealing with elected
That's correct.
folks.
Yes.
Okay.
You could define that in definitions at the beginning without changing the language,
Or he could be fine with it as is.
instead of adding elected to every one of them.
Okay, so you understand what, you'll clarify that perhaps a little further. And then likewise in A, under the control of the Board of Selectmen. I sometimes wonder what's under our control. I couldn't tell you exactly what's under our control.
Well, just look at your budgets.
But I think that's the default, is you could say our budgets. But I could argue, gee, why isn't health benefits under our control? I don't know that there's any legal ruling that says it's got to be elsewhere. It's just as an example. So I'm not, I just wrote to myself here, define. I can't define it. In the next one, it's again the same thing about elected officials, so I understand that. one of the things you don't put in there, where we're talking about the town administrator shall appoint based upon merit and fitness alone, and may remove, blah, 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 all these folks, right? And we're talking about those. Nowhere in there are we saying, so under this, he can hire anybody that works under a department head that reports to him without consulting that department head by this bylaw. And last year, we had some language in there that said, at least give them, and I'm sure a successful person and a person like Dave would obviously consult before hiring the assistant accountant, for example. But this doesn't say that he should. And we made some great pains last year to try to be inclusive of all that kind of stuff. So I point that out there. And then,
But he's not hiring the elected officials.
no, I'm talking about department heads. He has a department head, so he has town accountant department as the simplest example, and he hires the payroll clerk for the town accountant.
So maybe you want to add where it says the town administrator shall consider the recommendations of committees, board, councils, and commissions. Maybe you want to add in department heads.
That's all.
And they're in the middle of C.
Yeah, I mean, we can consider that. Rob and I were just talking, it wasn't our intent to exclude a collaborative effort, but again, to the point of, in this case, David having the opportunity to be more decisional, we were very specific.
Okay, I'm just trying to be,
Yeah.
I know that was something that people got a little hung up on.
Like, consider recommendations is not too directive. I mean, I think that's just process,
Yeah, right.
fair process.
Yeah.
And that makes sense, adding, considering the recommendations of department heads.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So then, appointments shall become effective immediately. Is that practical? Do we think that's practical?
Town council seemed to feel it was acceptable. I know you've always had the 15th.
Just like the second to
day
last
after.
sentence of C. Appointments to positions made by the town administrator pursuant to the appointing authority granted in this section shall become effective immediately. It really is, the appointment is effective when they start, when they're on the payroll, when they're on the clock.
The
it seems
point
to
of
me.
this is probably to say the selectmen don't have to bless the appointment. Is that right? Is that why this language is in there?
I don't think we really talked that much about that. So, again, I think the intent,
I don't think that's the.
yeah,
So-
the
so
intent
the
was,
intent. Yeah.
exactly, the decision is the person is hired, and is really, it could say as soon as they're able to begin,
Commence
but,
work or something.
Check
Yeah.
the oath of
Well, I mean,
office.
There you
but
go.
you just talked about the interim hiring of a town administrator. By the same logic, if the CM&D director leaves and, or was going to leave in a month, and David wants to have somebody lined up ahead of time, you don't want to appoint them immediately.
No.
You want to wait until the other guy leaves, so you want to appoint them for 30 days from now, or whatever it is.
yeah,
So I'm not sure how that helps anybody.
yeah. No, that's a legitimate scenario.
There was some dates in '23 where it was asking for a consultation of various groups and give them a period of time and so forth, so.
Yeah, I don't know that we were open to that.
I understand,
consultation.
yeah.
Right.
It's not, I understand. D, I'm not sure what this is doing. I've read it 3 times and I don't quite understand it.
Think it's trying to, if committees bring forward names,
Okay,
that all the names come in front of the board,
We don't want the TA filtering them,
filtering.
not passing them on.
oh,
So all is the emphasized word on that.
Right.
because that's a whole new, that wasn't in last year's 23.
Right.
So you're, having
With the
seen an
situation, you don't want
appointment
the TA to
process,
filter these recommendations that are coming from boards. They should,
all of them should come to here.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
I get you.
that's the purpose.
Good. All right, I liked your E, I think that's great. In F, I think your selections are fine of the, you talk about, this is responsible for the maintenance, repair of all town buildings. We had in there last year also for leasing the facilities, I
I'll
guess by
speak to that in a
default.
moment.
Okay. But also, you talk about rec commission, but they have no facilities and the land is town land, so they would not get the authority in that first section there. Okay, I'm just talking it out through myself here.
I had a comment on this, too. Town administrator will be an ex officio non-voting participant of or on the Elderly Housing Committee, Conservation Commission, Rec Commission, Cemetery Commission for the purposes of coordinating efficient, effective care. So, and I'm not sure how much of any of those committees' work actually pertains to the land. In other words, this would create a duty on the town administrator to show up at Elder Housing Committee, Conservation Commission, Rec Commission, and Cemetery Commission meetings. Now, you've just taken however many hours a week away from his job and had him sit through meetings, most of which is not going to be about town land and town buildings.
But I think what all could come of this is that elder housing, conservation, they make sure that the town administrator is copied on their minutes and their agendas.
But this
But
says
he doesn't-
participant.
Well, he can participate if he wants to come to their meetings.
Doesn't have to be.
He doesn't have to.
Doesn't require him to go to the meetings, is what
That's,
you're saying.
yeah, that's not at all clear from this. The way I would read that as a town administrator is, I'm supposed to show up at the Conservation Commission every time they meet, just in case they talk about town land.
No, I don't read it that way, but you're a lawyer, I'm not.
Well, maybe I'm not a
That's
good-
not the intent.
Okay, the tiebreaker goes to you, I think.
So, okay, so
Kenny, when it says participant, to me, that means they actually participate. I mean, anybody can get the minutes of a meeting.
There's an expectation.
I think David gets the minutes of those meetings anyway now. But if what you're trying to do is give him more hands-on involvement in how those boards administer their land, to me, this goes beyond that where it says participant. But I don't, maybe it doesn't, but that's my first read on it.
check that out.
While we're on the subject of the Conservation Commission.
Actually, I think we changed it from member to participant partially to deal with that, but
Yeah.
we could certainly,
We did soften that. Yeah.
we did talk about this, and that's certainly not the goal, is to add to the workload. It's to allow him or her to be able to attend if maybe we need to add some at their
Maybe there's
discretion.
something clear about that,
Yeah.
Paul?
Oh, just the makeup of the Conservation Commission is established by state law. And so I'm not sure that we could, by a bylaw, create another ex officio non-voting participant in the Conservation Commission.
Check
It's
that
just a
with Barbara.
legal issue.
Yeah, so you follow up with Barbara?
It would seem to me that if you're raising the issue, you should provide us with some guidance.
He doesn't want to micromanage you, George.
That's right. We're a policy board here.
Some legal advice.
We did have those groups in the same thing last year when we talked about them, but I think we called them members, not participants. But that's a good one for Barbara. All right? You good otherwise? In G, the second to last sentence, the town administrator may examine. I'm just looking, part of what I did was look at the wording we had last year. We had the word shall instead of may. In the last sentence, you use the word shall. Those are two different,
Boy, that, you certainly
Connotations.
want somebody to count how many of whatever it is we got.
yeah.
Okay, so you want us to check to make sure that the wording shall and may and check
Be
on.
consistent and what you feel should be the right
Okay.
word.
Just a thought on this. My comment on G was that I thought the town administrator, by state law, is the chief procurement officer, and that's something that we should encourage, and the bylaws should reflect that. So I'm happy with that. But again, I want to point out what seems to be a contradiction, where section 6.2, as the topic sentence, says the town administrator will not get involved in a whole series of boards and committees, yet under state law, he's responsible for pretty much everything, with the exception that you've indicated here of the, I believe it was the schools and the library, or except for the schools. So I believe under 30B, for the schools to do separate procurement, they have to get a delegation from the chief procurement officer. It's all state law. So, and it seems to contradict the 6.2 topic sentence. There needs to be something like notwithstanding the foregoing.
And you guys have full access to Barbara,
Right.
right?
And
So,
when we presented her with our 3 articles for her review,
no, I understand. Yep.
that we asked her to take out anything that we had in our original documents that she felt was not appropriate for the direction we wanted to go.
And she did.
And she did.
Yeah, she did. But we've raised a few questions that sound like
No.
worth some follow-up with her.
Follow up on that.
George?
I think the response that Kitty just gave you is in response to Paul's observation that some provisions, specifically the provisions that he cited, may be inappropriate because they conflict or are inconsistent with state law. If that's true, then our town council has missed that point, because we specifically asked her to take out all the issues that needed either special legislation or were in conflict with the law. She did. So what we have is town council approving one thing and one member of your board suggesting that that might be wrong. That's something that you and the town council have to work on.
Understand.
That's fine. That's fine.
And clearly, there's no intent that this bylaw is going to be inconsistent with state or federal law. I mean,
Right, I'm not opposed
a
to...
simple drafting solution is to say, shall consistent with state law, but that's, to George's point, that's exactly what we asked Barbara to review.
And it seems to me to raise the issue that it might be inconsistent with state law is flies in the face of why you have town council.
Well, that's, appreciate
If you
that
have that
comment.
question-
My response to that is, everybody's good at what they do, but not everybody's perfect at what they do, and there's always opportunity for error.
Then-
If there's a question, it's worth asking it to be sure.
Not to be
That's all we want to do is be
Not to
sure.
be argumentative.
Okay?
But if you raised an issue, cast a doubt, once that doubt is created, it takes a long time to get that doubt removed. We attempted to eliminate all the issues that Paul has just raised. Paul's raising them again. I suggest to you that if there is such an issue, such a conflict,
Yeah, we're going to follow
it
up.
should be done between this board, your board, and town council. Shouldn't be raised here.
And
That's
another
fine.
thing to remember, we have been looking at this document for a couple of months, adding, subtracting.
Yes.
And you're looking at it with fresh eyes, and you're coming at it from a different point
That's
of
right.
view. And that's what this discussion is all about.
Yeah.
So,
No,
Yeah, the whole point of this discussion is to raise questions. I don't think there's anything out of bounds. I don't think,
Yeah.
it's unfair for Paul to raise a question that he has. We need to be able to have an open conversation.
Yes. And now, I have no other questions on this, but what I'm going to do is, actually, before we go, if David, since he's right here, and we're talking about his job, no, if you have any thoughts or comments, David,
No, they've been inclusive. A couple have come in and talked to me, so I don't know.
yeah, so you're good with where they've gone.
We spent a lot of time talking to David,
Yeah.
probably more than he'd
Yeah,
like.
he's told me he spent a lot, no, so then I said we would open it up to folks out here if they have any questions or comments on this particular one. Nancy Hess in the back. Speaking as resident, as tax collector, as all of the above?
Well, just as an observer.
An observer, okay.
And I'm looking at G and scratching my head about the question of conflict in language here, because to me, there are two different issues. The town administrator may examine or cause to be examined the quantity, quality, or condition of services, supplies, etc. And the other one, the town administrator shall be responsible for the disposition of all supplies, materials, and goods. I think the difference is that if he wants to come in and contribute, that's one place.
No,
But-
surplus.
Surplus.
Disposition of surplus, reading.
Where?
Yeah, surplus. And those two aren't necessarily linked, I don't think,
Exactly, but what I'm saying the use of may in that first sentence makes sense because there are things that he should choose
Right, so we've asked them to just give it some thought, because we had the word shall there before, but I appreciate your insight and observation on that.
Shouldn't we want the procurement officer to count and make sure that, or have somebody count or insist that somebody counts and make sure we get what we ordered, what we're paying for? I would think that's a bare minimum, and I don't see that sentence as doing anything.
It says or cause to be examined, so I would think that he would be able to depend on the department heads to tell you whether or not they got the number of paper clips they ordered. and-
Wouldn't you want them to do that?
So that should be a shall.
I would think you'd want them to do that.
Actually, we spent some time discussing this, and our concern was the same you had about it being an ex officio member. We didn't want there to be any implication that the TA had to go in and count pencils, but we wanted to give them the authority. So, am I recalling this correctly? My recollection was we made a conscious selection of may rather than shall in terms of inspecting incoming software, pencils, chairs.
But with
We didn't
want-
or
we can't afford anything,
or
so-
cause to be
Mandate them to do it.
examined. See, in other words, if you just think of the approval of warrants, right? Payment. Anybody gets something, you buy something, you want to be sure, one of the first rules of control, if you will, over money going out, is you verify that you're getting what you pay for. This is, that's speaking to that in this line. So somebody ought to be doing that, or the bill shouldn't be paid.
Shall be responsible covers.
So it's shall examine or cause to be examined. That's just delegating, and you want your TA delegating that sort of stuff. We don't want them counting paper clips, but we want to be sure somebody is.
That's how I feel too.
So that's my thought.
we think differently.
Yeah. I saw Peter first, then Grace.
Mr. Chairman, obviously, we're discussing the difference between may and shall, and I'm not sure that we're not agreeing on what's intended, but how to get there, because, and now let me take the Board of Health as an example, as chair. Our administrator checks every purchase order that's made, and, and signs and I sign every warrant for everything that's ordered, et cetera, et cetera. To ask the town administrator to additionally count and check that, it goes back to your other argument about, you're going to chew up all this time. And
Well, we just said, Peter, we're not suggesting that he does it. We're just suggesting that it's made sure that it's done.
And the word may does that, but the word shall.
Now, May doesn't make it done.
Doesn't shall commit him to doing it?
No, it commits you to doing it. He's
Commits
going to
somebody.
cause it to be examined. He's
Shall
going to
make
make sure
sure
that
it's
before
done.
we sign the
Oh,
warrant,
okay,
he
so
says,
he'll either do it himself. or
look,
cause it
Peter
to-
signed this, but we sometimes get warrants that
We're
aren't
in the
signed.
same place, fine.
Yeah, I think we're on the same.
As long
And
as,
we're-
as long as
and
the
we're-
continuing phrase to cause it to be examined.
That's right, yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, and part of what we're doing here, Peter, is we're expressing our questions and concerns for them to consider before they go to final press and bring everything forward.
Interestingly enough, we end up in the same place.
Perhaps. Grace, you had something?
Yeah, the word administer, as applied to a department, does it mean the same thing as the word administer when it applies to a town-wide procurement system or a town-wide personnel system? Because that's the conflict between 6.2 and the other two. You don't want your town administrator administering departments, but in a sense, we have already taken out of individual departments two components. One is procurement, and the other is personnel policy, which we want to have townwide and consistent. Now, does that have to be specifically stated? Or is there in law some distinction about administering different components of a government? I don't know. But that's what you're aiming at. Certain things are townwide policies, and certain things are left up to elected officials, et cetera. And running their department is left up to, in this, is left up to them.
That was the point I was making. Just for purposes of clarity, I wanted to see, and this is not opposing the changes. This is meant to be constructive. It's sort of a reply to what George said before. I would think you need to say somewhere in here, notwithstanding the original introductory statement, he will get involved in these things where it says "for the town," and it says at the end there, "received by any town agency." So if you have a sentence before that says he won't be involved with elected boards and commissions, and then down here you say any town agency, if I were a judge trying to interpret this, I might come to the conclusion that the topic sentence is more to be followed than this. The town agency means town agencies not excluded in the topic sentence.
Probably the simplest fix there would be, say, other than as provided in these bylaws, to add that as a qualifier in the,
Yeah.
Yeah, upstairs.
Up at 6.2.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
We'll do it, yep.
Well, I'm only speaking as one member, but that makes sense to me.
Good.
We got two votes.
I was trying to stress something which I think is the goal, or has been stated as a goal sometimes, which is that there are certain things that you do want to be, in a sense, universal in town. And that's like personnel. You want the rules to be absolutely as broad as legally possible. And some of it, that should be clear.
Yeah, I think we're saying kind of the same thing here, so, good.
Agreed.
All right. I don't know if we had any more on this particular one. I think,
Okay.
if not, we'll move on to the next one, which is,
Do you want the
seen this before.
special legislation?
Yes, the payment of warrants, approval of warrants.
Okay, let's see. Okay, we are requesting that the general court grant the town administrator the ability to sign warrants. And we have described it in two sections. It allows the Board of Selectmen to also have review, and if they have questions, it is discussed at your next timely and daily, whatever, weekly town meetings. It also, when we were talking about the bylaw with Barbara St. Andre, Town Council, we had included several other job responsibilities under the bylaw that we would like to see passed. But she informed us that this could only be approved by the general court. And that was the ability of the town administrator to have full jurisdiction over the rental and use of all town buildings, and I won't go into all that language. Okay. And the other one was the negotiation of all labor and employment contracts, and there's a lot of language that had to do with that she said this has to go to the general court for authorization. We cannot authorize
This
it.
one that we're looking at versus the other
well,
two
the other
pieces.
two.
No, those other two pieces were
Other
going to
two
be part of
pieces.
the earlier bill, is that what, the earlier warrant?
They are not part of our warrant article.
Because they would have to get special legislation.
Yeah.
Correct.
Originally, they were,
Yeah, yeah.
and now they're not.
They're not. So my suggestion, and this is my suggestion, if you gentlemen feel that these are very important to the
So what was the rental of buildings, and what was the other one, Kitty?
rental and the negotiation of all labor and employment contracts.
Well, he is doing that.
But,
Well, except that one, not the school.
no, you
I
can't.
negotiate them, but I can't approve them.
No, we approve.
And the school has a separate
But-
process.
And the school.
Barb, go ahead.
You can delegate the authority on a case-by-case basis when it
Yeah.
comes down to collective bargaining, and you have done that. What you can't do is you can't put something that mandates that you have to appoint him in a bylaw. That was the position. of the
Yeah,
council.
so personally, I don't feel any burning urge for those two at this stage of the game, and I think it complicates the world at large here
I
plenty.
think the procurement officer has authority to lease property anyway.
I'm sorry?
I would think the procurement officer has the authority to
You
lease
have to
property.
designate that somewhere.
So it would come
Chapter
to
30
us.
Chapter 30B
and-
covers lease of property also, though.
Well, I can't speak, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure a lease of property is handled almost the same as a disposition of
Yes.
property, so
Yeah, it
it
is.
would be,
It's part
it
of
would come to the
30 days.
board.
Right. Yeah,
That's
so
right.
so I don't know, I mean, maybe we have to check with Barbara on what she was thinking there,
But
but.
we did not, we originally had included it in our bylaw recommendation, and Barbara said we were overstepping our bounds, we could not do
Maybe it
that.
was broader than the statute provides or something, okay.
I don't know.
Fair enough.
Anyway, so I just wanted to alert you that we originally had it in there, we took it out on her recommendation, and if you felt it should go to the general court, we would recommend you write the article. We have not researched it to write an article on it.
So this one, the words of what we've got here to enable the town administrator to authorize warrants, approve warrants, subject to the opportunity of any of us to review those warrants, and if we have questions, we can say, hold on that particular item, and we would address it at the next meeting. But the words you have in here are basically the same words we had in last year's Article 23.
Right.
One thing, reading this with a fresh eye this year, the 7 days, if we pulled something out to say we have a question, we want to address it separately from the warrant that he's approving, I think we might want to have 14 or 15 days, because one of the drivers to get him to approve the warrants was to reduce the frequency of the number of meetings we have to have. And so doing it, we would have to have a special meeting. I mean, we can do it, but, maybe just having 15 days in there
But
might
by law,
allow.
can you hold up a payment that long?
Certainly not a payroll payment, but a vendor payment, I don't know, my business.
15 days.
I know you like the cash flow.
Never.
but-
We're lucky to get paid.
Peter, is your concern,
No, it's just timing.
outside of your concern, is the payroll warrant outside the 7-day concern?
Ask me that again.
Okay. You're concerned that 7 days is too short, you'd have to call a
Yes.
special meeting? Okay.
Yes.
We know the law requires you to pay someone within 7 days.
Payroll,
Okay.
yeah.
So if the 7 days was extended, and there was an exception for payroll, that would satisfy both the law and your need to have more time. Would that be acceptable?
Yeah, I think so. I'm
mean,
just
just-
trying to give,
yeah.
not get locked in too restrictive.
I understand.
Yeah.
But you want more time, so if we gave you more time, it would not apply to the pay of,
So you could have the payroll still needs to be done within
within,
law, what's required by
compliance
law.
with the law,
And
right.
that's right, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I think
That
that would
was
be
our
great.
main concern with the
Yeah.
Okay,
separate
so we
payroll.
can work that.
Come up
I
with
mean, the
wordsmithing.
only
there.
reason you wouldn't want to approve something on payroll is if you didn't think it was proper to pay the person. So I don't know how that ties into you have to be paid within 7 days. You didn't do the work, for example.
Oh, no, you
and
gotta do the work.
It's
Yeah.
calculated wrong, right. So presumably, most of this stuff will shake out when you have the discussion with the town administrator, and
Yeah,
he'll
but-
send it back to the accountant or whoever.
Except the Fair Labor Standards Act, even if you dispute whether the work was done, you are not allowed to not make the payment, except for, there's a very narrow exception for somebody's reported mine violations, mine safety violations.
That happens all the time around here.
Exactly. It's an issue I know you deal with regularly, so I wanted to point it out. The point is, FLSA does not allow, gives you virtually no discretion, even if you're challenging whether the quality of the work, or whether, if somebody's done the work, you're required to make the payment.
Yeah, I think
So-
we were in the did the work, didn't do the work category.
Yeah, basically.
All right, I think we're on
So
the same page there.
this-
Yeah.
So any more discussion?
Any
Anyone?
discussion from up here? Any from out there? Terrific.
Expenses.
Okay.
Okay, here comes the fun one. Where's my chicken tracks here? We, as part of the Collins Institute's recommendations to the Board of Selectmen, they recommended expanding from a 3 to 5 member board. We had some lively discussions on this, and in recent years, we have had seen area towns increase the membership of their boards from 3 to 5 members, and it has been said, more representatives equals more representation. I could read you other language, and I think Chuck is going to carry on with this. I believe back in the 1700s, and I have a historian back in the corner here, the board did have 5 members. And at one point, did we go to 7, Margot? Yes. We went to 7 at one point.
How many town administrators did they have then?
I think you probably found the town administrator was within. So,
0. One for every 3 selectmen you have at town.
yeah. So anyway, I'm going to let Chuck carry on with this because he's
Yeah, the
been-
Collins report properly noted that there are pros and cons to both, and we spent a lot of time discussing it, and as the member probably most spent the most time struggling to reach a decision on it. We spoke to a number of towns that have done this: Southborough, Sudbury, Foxborough, Medway, Newbury or Newburyport, Ron?
Newberry.
The smaller, the more comparable one to Sherborn, and that have gone from a 3 to a 5-member board, and have been, 3 of them have been extremely pleased that they've done so. Some of the pros are broader representation, broader set of skills, people come with different focuses to the board. Some of the downsides that concern me is Mike, when we met with the Board of Selectmen, properly pointed out that a 5-member board can take more time, it can be less efficient. So anyone who claims that this is a black and white issue, I disagree with. I think there are clear advantages and disadvantages to it. Interestingly, a number of the TAs that we spoke to felt this was one of the most important issues, in part because with a 3-member board, you have the dynamic of all it takes is one member of the board to be replaced, and the whole focus and the whole town's policy can change. I recognize that board of directors aren't a perfect analogy, but you rarely set up a 3-member board of directors because the dynamic is tough. All it takes is 2 members to be at cross purposes, and you have a very difficult and potentially dysfunctional board, and that argues for a 5-member board. Our vote was not unanimous. It was a 4-1 vote, and anyone who claims that this is a clearly right or clearly wrong, I disagree with. I think there are advantages and disadvantages. 2 of the towns that we talked to said that they were surprised. That one of the TAs told me that he was concerned about finding candidates to run, that like Sherborn, and as the Collins report points out, there have been a lot of uncontested races. He said his experience was surprisingly exactly the opposite, that with the workload spread out over a 5-member board, with the different dynamics with that composition, they've had far more members, and they've actually had contested races. So on balance, I ended up supporting the 5-member board. I think it's something for the town to consider, and it. I think the dynamic works better. I think a 5-member board is better. I would not recommend any of my private clients to start off with a 3-member board. I think it's just it's a tough number. I don't think you want Peter had made the point that he prefers having more responsibility, and that's terrific. I'm not sure that's true of everyone who may be considering running. So we certainly don't view this as a cure-all at all in any regards, but we do think it would be beneficial to the town, and particularly in the long run.
Okay. Now, Kitty, you said the Collins Center recommended it. Can I just read what they're...
I probably I think I
Well,
overstated.
let me just read what they said, all right?
Okay.
One final comment on structure. Although it was clear that there was little enthusiasm for moving to a 5-member board at this time, which when they published it, it was November 2011, they said, "We do encourage the town to revisit this issue periodically to determine whether the 3-member board meets its current needs and culture." So that was really their official recommendation.
I overstated.
They also
noted
there were clear pros and cons for both boards.
Both ways, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Right.
But
So
it's not a recommendation.
it wasn't recommended, that's correct,
I
yeah.
overstated.
And so this is a healthy thing to go through. From where I sit, As I stated with you guys, I'm not in favor of enlarging the board. You know, I just think, as Chuck said, the meetings would get long. I think there could be confusion as to who's, you know, it says, well, you broaden the workload, you'd spread out the workload, but my experience is you could always have a slacker. You know, here, everybody's
We're all slackers
participating
here.
in all of this. And really, what we have is a competition for being the smartest guy at the table. Now you're going to get 5 people doing that. It's going to be bedlam. But the other thing, though, is my concern would be whether there's going to be an opportunity for less transparency, that government will happen more behind closed doors. That would be a fear of mine. You know, sitting here, if there were 5 of us, you know, a lot can get done before we get to this table. An awful lot can get done before you get to this table. So that's just something I would be cautious about. I mean, it's, you know, whatever the voters decide they think is best for the community, but I think would be not an exciting thing to be on a larger board. I like the, you know, here we are, it's 3, you know, Dover uses 3, and they're a very well-run town.
Lincoln has 3.
You know, there's a bunch of great communities that have 3.
I believe Weston does.
I don't know if you talked to Purcell, if you guys ever got to talk to Purcell. Good. I don't know what his thoughts were, because he's a TA that has a great perspective of a variety of communities, having served in a variety of communities as a TA, and since then bumping from town to town as interim TA. So there's one guy that, you know, I would respect his opinion on this matter quite a bit. I don't know what his thoughts were. And Kitty's smiling there, so maybe she has, he thinks Sherborn should have a 5-member board. Oh, it was off the record. So, well, I don't want to put anybody on the spot.
Yeah, no,
I don't want
that's-
to put anybody on the
Read
spot.
Article 35.
But the important thing is we have a good discussion about it,
Yes,
and that the voters have a chance to reflect their views
Right.
on it. And that's one reason we're bringing it forward.
Yeah, I mean, you know, another thought is, and I mean, I respect Chuck's view that more people will run. I'm not positive that's the case. In fact,
The TA in Southborough who said, I could quote him, said he was surprised because he said, and I share that view.
Yeah.
He said, it's counterintuitive. He said, I didn't expect, we've had trouble finding people to run for 3-person board. He said the dynamic, they've been so pleased with it. At the end of the day, that's one of the things that really swayed me. The TAs we spoke to said that they found it helpful to work with a 5-member board, and the towns that have done it have been almost uniformly pleased.
but Southborough has about 6 times as many people as we do. Sudbury has about 6 times as many people as we do.
No, Southborough's not that much bigger. No, Southborough's probably 2x, unless it's grown a lot more in the last few years.
What does it have, 12,000 or? Sudbury's 18,000, I think.
Yeah, Sudbury's bigger, but I thought Southborough was
more like 8.
8 or 9.
Yeah,
We actually, we have a list. I don't have it with me.
And
but there's-
Newbury is pretty.
You ever been to Newbury?
Well, I had to turn to.
I think we even looked at Harvard. I think the town of Harvard may have gone to.
And
they went to
5
5?
And they've been pretty uniformly pleased having done it. So,
I would say visit Newbury before you emulate Newbury.
One member of our board did. At lunch down there.
Well, let's just say
This
that the...
TV doesn't get to Newbury, does it?
Yeah. Let's just say the world at large here decides to support going to a 5-member board. What is Section 2? I don't quite understand the timing that this is describing. Let's say this year, people vote and say, we support this article.
Yeah, this was my
language
question
came from
too,
the town council.
if I could. Does that mean like next year, there would be 3 people running for selectmen?
Yes.
1 for 3,
There'd be 1 for a 3-year, 1 for a 2-year, 1 for a 1-year?
But there could be 3 for a 3-year and none for 2-year, none for
No, it
1 year.
can't be that.
no,
Well,
this clearly states how it would be done, but this is probably 2 years out.
Yeah,
It
because
doesn't
the
mean that
60 days won't allow
doesn't mean that
for
nobody
right?
could run for the 3-year. You could have a contested 3-year election and nobody running for the 1 and 2-year slots. You can't force somebody to
No,
select a shorter term.
no, they,
Yes, you can.
No, they've actually had that issue in other places. We had 4 people for the longer term and,
Oh, then
One
you
person
don't
for the
have
shorter
anybody
term.
for the other 2 terms. No.
exactly,
And you have a failure to elect.
So,
All that's covered in statute.
right.
so just back to the timing, if we could. So if the voters approve this article this year, then assuming, what it does is it authorizes this board, or the board that exists in 2 months, 3 months, to petition the general court. Doesn't necessarily compel this board to do that, but it authorizes the board to do that. Little thing they're giving you.
I'm not going down that line.
But nonetheless,
We're gonna do
it's
what
the
the
voters'
voters
will. That's
tell
right,
us.
right. I understand that. Yeah, so it's the voters' will, right? So we go petition the state for this act, and the state presumably comes back before the next town meeting, right? 8 2015. We then have 60 days to get it on to be, assuming it's approved. It can't happen in 2015's election. Can't happen.
No.
Right? Okay,
It has
so
to
it's 2
happen
years out.
twice, it has to be 2 different town meetings would vote on this.
Yeah, we talked about
That's
that.
what you're talking about, okay. Is that the way they do it?
Well, I don't know if it
Is that
has
the way
to
everybody
be,
does
but it would be our choice
And the
to go
general,
back to town meeting.
and the general court may ask that we put it on a general ballot.
Mhm.
I think it
And that has happened.
Right, right.
I think it has to be approved at an annual town meeting,
Yeah.
so it could be, the first step could be a special town meeting and then done at the next annual town meeting, but
Yeah,
this is most
All
common.
right.
Okay, that's the timing we've been assuming.
Yeah, that's right.
okay.
Any comment from the outside here?
Any thoughts back there? Peter?
I was a little bit surprised at your comment about, with 5 members, an awful lot could go on before an open meeting, that you feel it would be less transparent. By the same token, the open meeting law has a prescription against serial emails.
Understood.
And I would expect they'd have a similar prescription against serial conversations. But the point being is that you're really, I think, impugning your own integrity, which shouldn't be done. You should not do that. I mean, you must presume the integrity of who is elected, and yourselves included, and anyone who comes after you. And I really come a little bothered to hear you suggest that a 5-member board would have some effect on that integrity, because I don't believe it would. I believe the quality of the people in this town, the quality of the people that we elect, would augur against that. It just,
Well, Peter, it's
just
legal, it's
shouldn't or wouldn't
perfectly
happen.
legal to talk to somebody else on a 5-person board. It's not legal to talk to somebody else on a 3-person board.
I
It's
know
not a
that,
question of
I'm
integrity.
suggesting that's absolutely fine. All I'm also suggesting is that the integrity of the people who are elected would not, in fact, would not have serial conversations and create a consensus before coming to an open meeting and having an open discussion. That one could expect equal transparency with a 5-member board as a 3, and I'm surprised to hear Peter suggest otherwise.
I think they've had that problem in Wayland, from what my understanding is. There's, I believe, litigation in Wayland over open meeting violations
Well, I'm just
with a
saying,
5-person board.
Peter, I'm not saying that I would do it. I'm just, and I believe in transparency, and I agree with you that you would presume that we elect people that would be of the utmost integrity. Nonetheless, the opportunity for non-serial conversations is much greater with a 5-member board.
No, non-serial conversations, there should be. I mean, as you point out, if you meet somebody at a cocktail party, you ought to be able to have a conversation, And now you can't. So, point taken.
That's why we don't go to cocktail parties with each other.
Besides, I couldn't keep up with them.
Let's go to Beer Fest instead.
Yeah, that's right.
Let me explain why you're not invited.
I would think that
No fun.
there have been challenges to 3-member boards for violating the open meeting law, haven't
I'm positive. I'm sure there are.
I'm
there?
sure.
I would think so.
Well, it's an absolute bar on a 3-person board. 2 people can talk on a 5-person board. What they can't do is then talk with 2 more people.
2 more people.
Right.
Or, yeah, okay.
We appreciate this extra time that you've allowed us to discuss this.
Well, it's important.
And
And it would have been 40% longer with a 5-person board.
I'm going to make
That wasn't my experience on advisory.
I'm going to make one comment that is my own personal comment, and then I'll have a closing comment. Why no recommendations for treasurer tax collector? The elected officials still have 2 years left in their terms. Would this be the time to, and this is my idea, to look at the total structure of the finance department in Sherborn? Would a finance director who reports to the town administrator be the way to go? The Department of Municipal Finance could include the offices and functions of the town accountant, treasurer, collector, or if we have a treasurer collector, informational services coordinating, and assessors, and I know that's a holy grail there, with all their related staffs. And that's just an idea I'm throwing out there, and it's my own personal idea.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think when I met with you, I thought your priorities were slightly different than what ours were previously and what mine would be, in that, the Collins report and the DOR did recommend combining the positions. And the town has explored this issue of combining treasurer and collector for a number of years. And yet you guys, maybe by broadening what you're describing, that might be very interesting. The provisions in what was in last year's Article 23 did allow for folks to wind out their terms and all of that stuff. There was some might argue not so clear, but at least 3 different folks came to similar immediate savings opportunities and so forth. So I was a little disappointed that you didn't touch that one in this go-round.
We had a very short time.
But I'm glad to hear the broader thought process that you've just described, because I think that makes
I'm
some
skeptical
sense.
about the cost savings, looking at other towns.
No, I
I'm
understand.
not sure the data is there, and again, speaking individually, I wasn't sure.
Well, there are a couple of analyses done
I disagree with
last
the
year.
recommendation in terms of, I think it's functioning
That
well.
wouldn't be the...
Right.
Our
into that.
charge included a report to be given to the town moderator, Corey Lincoln, by February 2nd, 2014. We have provided a draft report to Corey.
Thanks, Kitty.
Thank you.
Thanks for your flexibility with the storms and these postponed meetings and all that. Thanks for coming, thanks for all the hard work. I know some of you are new to some of this stuff. I mean, Rob, I know you haven't served on a committee before, so I hope you found it enjoyable in spite of working with George Shea and the likes, folks like it. No, George is a friend of mine, I can say that.
With friends like that, I don't...
Thank you very much.
Well, you got a lot done. I mean, this
Yeah.
was a substantive group, and
Yeah.
you did you took a lot of time, and you gave a careful study
So you're going to rubber stamp everything we've recommended?
all the time, Chuck.
And
Yeah.
can I also say thank you to David Williams for getting Wi-Fi down in the police station meeting room.
Oh,
It is a great addition, because we were absolutely stymied, and thank you very much. And I also, if I can put on another hat, I apologize, I want to thank CM&D and under John McAvoy's leadership with the last 2 storms. They were there, and they kept the sidewalks open for the members of the Woodhaven community, and I thank him very much.
great. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Don't be strangers.
But just to remind you, we are going to put all 3 of these articles on the warrant, so your desire for the public to have their opportunity, we did say we would put these on. There are placeholders, right?
Yeah.
Well, we had only requested 2, but we
Slid in another one
So
for
which 2
you.
do you want us to put on, Kitty?
I want you to put all 3 on, but I just want to explain the reason we had included the warrant signing and the increase in membership of your board in one article, and then we, in our discussions with Barbara, we felt it was better to have them as separate articles so that they could be discussed
Right.
separately.
I just want to point out, I want to point out
Thank you very
that,
much.
I want to point out that after the warrant closed, it wasn't like they brought in a new article.
Right.
It was just
was part
splitting
of
up this.
Yeah.
this
Kitty, were these, say, 4-0 and 3-0 votes? I know Chuck said one of them was actually 4-1, and you have 5 members. What was going on with the voting?
Well, one member was not in favor of that particular article.
So where it says 4-0, though, that implies
We
that,
only had 4 members at the meeting at that time.
gotcha, so it was a 4-0 and the one member who was opposed was gone.
I don't know which article you're talking about.
Well, that was the one Chuck mentioned was 4-1. The other ones, it says 3-0 and 4-0.
I was the one that opposed the
Yeah.
initial, and then I didn't vote.
So it's like an
Final
abstention.
draft.
Gotcha, okay. It just was just inconsistent between what Chuck
Agreed.
said, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Thanks again. Good job. All right, so we go to TA report.
Well, I met with the advisory committee last, on February 12th, 2 weeks ago, and went through the budgets that I had thought were ready, and then discussed a few of the concerns that were still outstanding, namely with the police department was the cruiser, the overtime, and this Wednesday night, I'm meeting with them to go over CM&D and recycling station, transfer station, and those items. So I'm not sure when you're actually going to consider the budgets finalized, or when you actually want those in front of you to finalize, because I believe their expectation is that these budgets are coming to them as final budgets. So I need to straighten that out with them Wednesday night, is explain that the selectmen still have a desire to have all these come back to them for one vote as a
Yeah,
whole budget.
so we haven't really voted on them, and part of what we're going to vote on depends on a little give and take I suspect you're still having with advisory, unless you think you're pretty well there, because we could even consider doing that Friday if you think you have things sufficiently nailed down where they're on the same page as you are, because I think we were on this, had some questions, I want to ask a little bit about those, but we were on the same page with what you were doing for the most part, subject to some tweaking on, with advisory, right?
Right. So there was the budget at 1.4% that we had reviewed, and then the issues were the police cruiser, the police overtime, the issue with the CM&D base,
Yes. Yeah.
what was the true appropriation. There's an issue at the transfer station with the switch of a vendor, and there was one more item that was, escapes me now, I can't remember.
That's all right, but the big ones were the police cruiser, I think you've resolved the overtime reasonably comfortably, if you could just describe that. I'm aware of it, but I don't know if Paul or Mike...
Well, the overtime issue was, in order to get to the 1.4%, there was an amount that was projected for overtime for FY15 was $135,000. I had taken $15,000 out of that to round it off at $120,000, so that would be an increase from the current year overtime to next year's overtime from $90,000 to $120,000. And I was comfortable with that if I could talk to advisory and convince them that, we could try this, we'll shoot for this, and they should hold it in their back pocket that we might be in for a supplemental if it doesn't come into being. And they understood that, and I believe that they were looking, or they didn't vote on it, but they seemed to agree with that they would want to leave the 120 in, and then the 15,000 would be, they would increase their reserve by 15,000. So I think normally they have a 60,000 reserve.
On their reserve account that they use, so they're going to increase
Right.
that account, I see.
Right. So they'll tack the 15 onto there.
I see.
They agreed to put the 40,000 into the budget
For the cruiser.
for the cruiser, so that becomes part of the base
So
of police
that's
department.
that's above the 1.4% if you take that
Right.
off.
So you end up 1.4% allowed for $57,000 increase, so it's at 2.8% now.
Yeah. And where are you going to wind up on CM&D? Because the base had, last year, for some crazy reason, pulled out the outsourced lawn mowing or whatever it was, even though we
Right.
had a need, and we knew we had a need, and it was like 40 grand. So
Right.
last year's base that we're comparing our 1.4% to is mistakenly low. is
It-
how I would describe it.
Right, and that's a good way of saying it, because the CM&D budget was put in completely flat and shows a 3.5% increase. So that can't be.
Yeah.
That's a red flag that
Yeah.
there's something wrong somewhere. So I'm pretty sure that it was in, the budget adjustment that was done was only done in that year when they transferred from the salaries down to the expenses. But that was not a budget adjustment that was done carrying forward on the base, so,
So you're going to go in with the base that includes the full complement of personnel and this outsourcing, which puts it higher than the
the percentage will look
mistaken
higher,
base
right, yeah,
of
and,
two-third of fiscal 14.
right, and the chair seems to understand that, but I think the way that they'll look at it is, yes, so there's a potentially $40,000 more there that would cover the police cruiser. It would offset that, but in the big picture. But I don't know if,
No, because that's an extra 40. There's the police
Available.
cruisers, 40 above, and then there's another 40 that's needed for CM&D for this outsourcing, where last year there was a zero amount budgeted.
right, I mean, that's already in his budget, so if you added the 40,000 into the base for the current year, then he wouldn't have that increase showing for next year, which frees up 40,000 to be
Yeah,
used someplace
yeah,
else, which
yeah.
they used on
Okay, so they can
transferring in for the
justify
police cruiser.
that you're
Their
coming in at
transfer.
3.2% overall, or whatever it is.
Right,
for
right,
that
right.
Error from last year, okay.
So, the other issue was number 5 issue was the town buildings account. I had reduced by 10,000. While we're still trying to figure out what truly is the number for the facilities and having a capital plan, we do know that we wanted to do the carpeting for 10 grand. So Wednesday night, we were going through the town buildings, and I was going to ask the same sort of thing, that there be a transfer in for the 10,000.
But that would be this fiscal year, yes, or?
No,
it's
next fiscal
Next
year.
fiscal year,
Yeah.
okay.
So that, the amount for next year was reduced by 10
But you want
to
it
get to the
back in-
1.4%.
But you want it back in for the carpets?
Right, I would say that that's the carpets. If they don't do that, then we still got to do the carpets, but I'm going to have to carve it out of somewhere.
Yeah, so,
In the
because that was something we were cautioning about.
Right.
Going too deep on that.
Right.
But having to live with it, and you guys certainly can
Yeah.
manage that.
So hopefully they will, agree to the same sort of situation where they transfer it into the base.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know we had some questions that we've gone over a few times on some of this stuff, that were, one was getting an understanding of why the police salary line went up like 3.6%, when in our minds, we were thinking we had a 1% increase just for the contract, and so
Right.
so we would have expected an $8,000 increase for the salary, and there's a 40,000, so there's 30-some thousand to
Right.
explain, and I think you have some of that, right?
Yeah, I need to put it in English then, so
Okay.
that it's
But
written out.
there's
but-
clear explanation. Some piece of it was somebody is bumped up because he's gotten through the academy.
Right.
Others have bumped up to the rates
Right.
versus, because their
Well, I mean,
roles
the
have changed.
intent was, we signed the contract with the police department, so we need to have a walkthrough from that point to
What
this
we're showing.
budget.
Okay. So you still have to do that, is what you're saying, or?
I have all the information, I just haven't compiled it in a
Oh,
form
okay,
to
'cause-
give to you.
so that would be good for me, just speaking for myself, before saying, yes, it's all good, right?
Right.
The other one we wanted to look at was the comparing calendar 13 to calendar 12 of the Pittman versus the old schedule, to see whether we had savings. And you had sent me an analysis that, I don't know if Dave Bento did it or something.
Yeah, I think it came from police.
But it was it showed almost a $50,000 reduction in overtime under the Pittman schedule, and that was not for the full
Right.
year, that was just for 6 months of the year. So I don't know if a full year analysis will show an even larger benefit.
Yeah, I would project that the same way, so
So we
that,
might expect a $100,000 OT reduction under the Pittman.
there's
Let's
a lot
think
to look
about
at.
that. Yeah, but what was done was the period March through September, 6 months
Right,
of 2013 versus the same period last year. They pulled away the outliers and said,
Right.
raw Pittman, raw old 4-2 schedule
yeah.
is about a $50,000 reduction in overtime
And that's why I was
under the Pittman.
okay reducing the overtime by the 15. I
Yep.
felt that as long as it was somewhere in somebody's back pocket, if it truly came to fruition that way, that
Yep,
there was some place to go for it.
okay. And you're gonna, we'll see how it all winds up with CM&D and this 40 grand confusion. Did you ever find out if there's any double counting we talked about of CM&D amounts in both, the same amounts in regular CM&D budget plus also captured in, take elderly housing?
Well, yeah, I mean, in the elderly housing budget, which is funded completely from the Woodhaven
Yes.
funds, they have an expense item that gets transferred to our general fund.
Where they pay money to the general fund?
Right.
Right.
And then CM&D has budgeted in 6,000 or so in their line items to deliver services to Woodhaven. So those services are,
So if they're capturing
out of
that
the-
6,000 in their budget, and the 6,000 is captured in elderly housing, how is that not double counting?
well, I mean, to me, the general fund has one amount, and then the Woodhaven funds have a separate amount. So they're both accounted for, so if CM&D budget is basically general fund dollars, so
I understand that.
if Woodhaven does a transfer from the Woodhaven funds into the general fund,
Yeah, but, you
and
know,
then
we're-
CM&D
we're-
pays out from the general fund
So
for those
voters
services.
are approving the appropriation of that 6,000 twice. See, that's my confusion.
Oh, we're
Maybe
I'm
supposed
not-
to underwrite the cost of running
CM&D, that's why CM&D's budget should be 6,000 less. It's kind of,
Yeah.
is what I'm driving at.
Oh, I
You
see.
It's
Yes.
revenue from another source, it's from an
Yeah.
internal source.
Yeah,
Right. But non-taxpayer money was the idea.
yeah. Yeah, so
Right,
that's
but
why,
it-
that's on that.
Yeah, but the money is coming into general fund, and then it's going out through CM&D.
So what you're saying is we should see the 6,000 as revenue reflected in the model.
What it is. I mean, Woodhaven has it as an expense. If you looked at Woodhaven, they would have expense and revenue, and there's an expense going out, and then it increases the
Yeah.
general fund because it's a revenue to the general fund. And then on the other side of the ledger is the CM&D payment, which reduces the general fund.
I don't know, I'm
So
just
it's-
discreetly stupid, I think. but-
Oh, it makes
Well,
sense. What
if
it
you,
said.
I mean, if you think of it,
how we designed and used
how would you not, yeah, if you
No, I know it's
didn't do
coming in
that,
and
how would
out.
you not?
It's a perception question, I think is
Yeah.
what Peter's saying. It's
You know, the voters
It
are
makes
gonna
our budget
approve-
look bigger.
Yeah,
But the Woodhaven dollars are not part of the general fund budget. That is
But the
any part of the
CM&D
tax bill.
cost is part of the general fund cost.
Right. But when you look at this, the general fund budget, there's an expense and a revenue. The revenue is coming in from Woodhaven, the expense is going out with CM&D.
all right.
It's balanced in the general fund.
I mean.
In Woodhaven, they're taking it,
I'll take this offline, I'm still a little confused.
in Woodhaven, they're taking it in.
But
Yeah.
the intent was that
Well, I
it would be
understand what
work
we're
done
doing.
by CM&D and would be paid for by Woodhaven.
I think the answer is we could make the general fund budget smaller, but it would be smaller on the revenue side and the
Yes.
cost
That's
side,
right.
so it would just be a wash, it wouldn't matter.
Right,
That's
right.
right.
And apparently, at some time, they wanted to show it tracking through,
Both
passing
ways.
through the funds.
It doesn't
Right.
raise our tax rate.
I might ask Ruth, just to
Yeah, because it's a,
less stupid on
yeah.
that one.
But I mean, with the, if you didn't do it that way, you would either have to take it out of both and not deliver the services, or,
Right.
you know,
I don't think there is an or, I think that's
right.
it.
I mean, there's an expense and a revenue item in the general fund, and then
Yes,
expense and revenue under Woodhaven,
right.
and then the two funds have the, the transfer across,
Yeah, yeah.
but,
For CM&D to write a check to its employees, it has to draw on something.
That's right.
And
That's
that's
coming
their
out of there,
budget.
yeah.
The general fund dollars.
I see where Peter's going, though. It looks like a bigger number in our budget, so it'd be nice if we could pull it back.
Well,
But it doesn't make sense to
I mean, there are a number of things that offset our budget that we could, if you do a fee increase, because we want to look at fees, that's just going to show us more revenue to the general fund.
But it doesn't show
But it's not
us
going to
Doesn't
show up as
offset
more
the
money
budget,
for us
doesn't
to...
reduce the budget, no, I
Right.
get
Right,
that.
that's the thing.
Yeah, I get
Yeah.
that.
Where are we
Well,
with the fees? Are we,
Yeah, I scheduled it.
We have it for the middle of March.
oh, good.
Yeah, it might have been the same
which,
meeting, but...
here's the question, is there an updated model, do we know?
As far as I know, it's still model number
It's still-
2, which was,
The one we've been working off, or I think I might still be working off the model.
I think that was done February 11th.
Yeah, I don't know where I put it, but I'm on Model 1, so I don't have Model 2.
You don't have Model 2?
No, we only have Model 1, which
That's the
is
really good one,
113.
So Model 2 was distributed, must
At
have been to
advisory.
advisory on the 12th.
Yeah, so maybe we can get an updated model for Friday, the
Right.
latest and greatest, would be good to have. One of the other items of, open items was the GIC analysis. Is there
Yes.
something that's floating around? Will we ever get to see that?
Yeah, I mean, it's about a $250,000 savings if you switch to the GIC.
We should know that sooner than later, I
Right,
think.
but I kicked it back to
Pete?
the treasurer because they just found out about the 10% increase or 8 to 10% in our existing health insurance.
Health insurance.
So I
And
wanted
is
to go
that
back
different
and
than what was used? He used 10 or 7?
I think he used, less than that. I think he used like a 4% increase or something like
Oh,
that.
really?
But, and I kicked it back to him to update it so that it's the correct numbers.
Correct versus the GIC.
Right,
And,
right.
Do you think you're using the latest GIC numbers?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So I think I still think you're going
It's
to
at
end up.
least 250 then, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Delta.
Yeah. So you would give out a third to a half usually to get the bargaining units to move, to get into.
Well,
For this-
I mean, before we even go there, at least to just know what the
Yeah.
magnitude of the opportunity is, and then the question is whether that's an opportunity we should pursue,
Right.
and then how we go about doing
Right.
it.
The shift from moving current employees into the rate saver under.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's painful.
That's happened,
That's, well, yeah, but if we were trying to move everyone to our GIC equivalent plan,
Oh,
it's
and
not,
it's not that beneficial.
yeah, I mean, there's a benefit, but it's going to cost you almost everything that,
So it really isn't a GIC equivalent, it sounds like.
no, it's
being
not.
offered.
Exactly,
Right,
yeah. It's a little misleading to call it the GIC equivalent plan
Yeah,
because
okay.
it doesn't net the same savings as a GIC equivalent plan.
Yeah. Well, that's a very good analysis for us to consider and talk further if we have time for, if you have new information on it. The soonest you have new information on it would
Right.
be when we'd want to deal with it. Even if it comes up Thursday, we could add it into the agenda
Yeah,
for
he's back
Friday.
on Wednesday, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah,
Should
so
we
he
put it on
may
the
have to-
agenda?
Yeah,
And pull it
yeah,
off
we
if
can
it
pull it
doesn't
off.
come
Let's
up?
do that.
Yeah.
GIC discussion. Glad
Something
you're
like that.
along
Isn't that
here.
good?
You know, if there were 5 of us, you probably
Yeah.
wouldn't
We've
have
been
come up with
drowned out.
that.
There would have been 3 other ideas worse than that there.
That's funny.
But I do
guys.
have there are a list of your questions or concerns that you had sent
Yes.
to Mary.
Yeah.
So we have those that we're working on, and then today, the ones that you sent at 10 a.m., I've got.
On the warrant questions, yeah.
Right,
And you're
right.
like, will this guy never stop? But
No, that's your job.
it's my job, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the micromanaging I'm doing here, but
I look at it as job security.
there you go.
Yeah.
That's right.
For the time being.
You got plenty to do.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so we are working on those.
Excellent. That's great. That's all a guy could ask, you know? Beautiful. So that's all I had on that stuff.
So I
And-
had 2 handouts that I'll wait till Friday. And it was just the memo that I had passed out to advisory and the supplemental information about the reduction in enhanced budgets that you had mentioned you'd like to see a copy of those. When they submitted them, I just said,
So
submit
you
them to
could,
me.
that could be in the packet for reading?
Yeah.
That would be great. And
Yeah.
if it's an agenda item, let's have that discussion.
Okay.
Because I think we should just keep budget, warrant updates, and planning discussion as a recurring agenda item. Don't you think, under here?
Yeah, I do.
Because I
Yeah,
think we have good discussions.
we're going to do something every week
We're
on
spending
those.
everybody's money, we ought to talk about it.
Yeah, so we need to have things wrapped up definitely by the end of March, because we got to print the book.
Well, when is advisory's public hearing? I
March
asked
13th?
Diane, we talked about it.
29th?
So we have to now be sure we're all on the same page on the budget stuff for advisory's public hearing.
Right.
And to the extent we can be on the same page regarding the various warrant articles, that's fine, but we don't necessarily have to be, is what we looked at last year.
You can take
because
your
we have-
positions on the warrant articles all the way up to
When we sign it,
town meeting.
up to town meeting. Right, we can still sign it,
Right,
the items that are on it, without taking a position on it.
right.
But to the
And-
extent we feel that we want to take a position for the advisory public hearings, I think we will endeavor to do that.
If you want to take a position and have it printed in the book, then there would be a time frame that you got to
Well, we should do
deal
that.
with. If there is something that
Yeah,
you,
have it in
If
the
we have a
book.
position, we should have it in the book.
there has been,
But they haven't agreed to do that.
it's been looked at as, that book has always been looked at as advisory's
Advisory's
book. It's your warrant. It's the selectmen's warrant. So in most places, it's, the warrant book that goes out would have the selectmen's warrant with the background material and sometimes the motions for all the articles. And the selectmen would have a summary of the article and maybe a position on the article.
And then,
And list
and
the
then the finance
sponsor.
committee or the advisory committee would have a position.
Right.
If it was a zoning article, the planning
Right.
board would have a position.
So if that's something that you,
That's what we do in other towns, and probably
Most
what you
towns
do
seem
in
to do it that way.
Framingham.
So you guys would like to do that. That's a lot of work for us to try to get done.
you would have, we would have
Before it goes
to,
to press, and it's Jeannie that manages that process, and you don't want to get her mad at you.
I don't think we
just
need,
don't.
I don't think we need statements.
Now she's going to come
Certainly
in
not for every article.
through the door.
So we have a burning
Yeah.
position. I'm for that.
advisory's already writing up the article summary and what the article does. And then they usually have a separate paragraph that's the advisory committee's position or recommendation.
All right, well, how about this for Friday's discussion of budget warrant updates and planning discussion? That to the extent any of us have particular warrant articles that we think we ought to put something in the book, let's identify those so that we.
Or you do your own,
But at some point, don't we want to issue a warrant?
Well, we have to sign the warrant. I don't know.
We're talking about
What
the
happens
warrant
with
book
that?
versus the warrant. The warrant's
Yeah.
just the warrant.
Yeah, but at some point, we need to finalize what the articles are
Yeah.
and that they're on the warrant.
All right, what was the date for that? You don't have that?
Well, we set that date a long time ago.
Yeah.
The end of March, 27th.
Yeah, it was way at the end of March. I don't have that.
I mean, I've been assuming that all of the articles that have been submitted and added to that checklist from the notices of
be in
intent
the
are being
warrant.
included in the warrant.
But the wordsmithing is still going on all of
The
them.
actual articles to take a position on, yeah.
No, even the revisions to the text on some of these articles.
Yeah, that's right. We just
Yeah.
had a bunch here, Tom.
Well,
We just got, I just was looking at the submission from the Agricultural Commission that says here's the stuff they want to add to the agricultural bylaw. Well, have we put that on the warrant? And are we taking all of their suggestions? And then there was a right to farm bylaw. Was that a separate article or is it the same article?
Well, we have
They have
John
two articles.
Dowse on the agenda at some point.
Coming up,
When?
March 6th.
March 6th is when we address that, Paul, but does that,
But
is
the-
that our article? Or is it, like, who's in the parentheses is whose article
It's
it
got to
is?
be either the Board of Selectmen or a citizen article.
Well, zoning does have it, but this agricultural commission,
Why,
is appointed, so.
So they're asking us to put this article on, and I think we indicated we're in support of it, but the point I'm trying to make is that before you have advisory writing decisions about what what motion they're going to make, and before we take a position,
Well, we haven't deliberated on that
shouldn't we have
article.
decided what the article is?
Yeah, we haven't done that. That's
Yeah,
March
I mean, I don't
6th.
think we've said we're in favor of it
No,
either.
that's March 6th.
No.
Whose is it?
Yeah.
We haven't deliberated.
What article is it?
We just
What does
said
it say?
exists, basically.
Yeah, we didn't talk about right to farm or any of that.
No.
no.
So that will be dealing with March 6th on that particular one, but it's the same issue on a number of these articles.
So town council's standing out in the hall.
Yeah, so we're getting ready to go.
And clerk is the only, I think clerk is the only other one that,
No,
We
we have
haven't- Okay.
employment agreement,
The police chief stuff,
personnel administration plan, and to amend the general.
that's all Rick.
That's all, yeah, that's all March 6th.
So we'll be busy next week from Thursday.
Just not to sound like a Johnny OneNote here, but I would like to see a draft warrant, not a list of,
I thought we already gave that out.
I mean, it's very helpful.
No, we don't have the draft of a warrant itself.
Jean just copied the draft warrant. I can
Yeah,
have her-
so we'll have it Friday.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Thanks,
thought I
Johnny
had this
OneNote.
attached to the top of the warrant. That's what?
Yeah. Johnny OneNote, we got to remember that
That's a
name,
good one.
don't we?
That's a good name.
You'll be forever called that now, Paul. I don't know. Johnny OneNote. All right. Let me try something here. Okay. So that's good. We're going to move along, and I have a pile here to move along with. I'm gonna put it right here. Yes, I did. All right. So we have nothing further except to move towards executive session. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I move that the Board of Selectmen enter into executive session. Yes, Elliot, sorry.
If we've used up all of our salt money, can we switch to pepper? Just a thought.
You're a laugh a day, I'll tell you. All right, I move that the Board of Selectmen enter into executive session to discuss strategy
He's the salt of the earth.
with respect to litigation where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's litigating position, and the chair so declares pursuant to general laws with respect to the following cases: to discuss strategy with respect to pending litigation. Sophie Cannon and Chris Cannon, Jeff Charneski and Kim Charneski, Susie Fontaine and Matt Fontaine, Artemis Jakowski, David Kaplan and Karen Kaplan, Joan Kingsley and Diane Courier as they are trustees of the Brewster Nominee Trust, Franklin Perlmutter and Elizabeth Perlmutter, Sagittae LLC, Elizabeth Sheehan, Ellie Sonis and Andrew Sonis, Parvis Tayabedi as trustee of the Tayabedi 2004 Revocable Trust, Michael D. Webb and Pamela Kading Webb, plaintiffs versus the Town of Sherborn and the Town of Sherborn Planning Board as individuals, as well as the likewise the same plaintiffs versus the Town of Sherborn and the Town of Sherborn Zoning Board of Appeals individuals. So I will take, I need a second and a roll call vote.
Second.
Motion is seconded by Mr. Jimo. Having a second, we will now have a roll call vote. Mr. Durensis?
Aye.
Mr. Jimo?
Aye.
Mr. Caruso? Aye. Having passed by a vote of 3-0, the open session is now closed. Good night, and we are now in executive session. All right, follow the script.